Inaz and the Two Unmarriageable Lovers. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 4 books. Book 1. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real love story of 2 unmarriageable lovers. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 60. The Unavoidable Murder. Inaz had never expected one day in her life she could kill a person. An innocent person who did nothing to her. Before that time, she thought she could not dare to kill a cat. But on that fateful day, her difficult situation led her to murder an innocent Indian girl. She had to choose between her life and the life of that innocent victim. The victim had never met her before that day. It was her destiny or bad luck which led her road to cross the road of her murderer Inaz. She just happened to be in the wrong place and at the wrong time. If she came there 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after, she might be alive and survive for many years after that day. The victim was supposed to fly to her promised land in Canada on the same day she had been brutally killed by Inaz. She and her husband had waited for many years to obtain visas to that country of great opportunities. They wanted to leave the hell of India and immigrate to the paradise of the West. They had that life dream from the time they fell in love with each other in their fresh year while they were studying medicine in the same medical college at the University of New Delhi. 5 years had passed by since they got graduated and 3 years went by since they got married. They immediately applied for landing immigrant visas and waited for 2 long years before their applications were approved. They sold their house and spent a lot of money on travel agencies to fulfill their life dream. They said their goodbyes to their relatives and friends and headed to the Indira Gandhi International Airport to take their flight to the New World. Many good people among their relatives and friends came to the international airport to see them off. An hour before their plane would take off, the victim told her husband she was going to the ladies' washroom. By then her husband and she had already gone through the police checks, and their traveling bags had been taken from them and sent to their plane. They also received their boarding cards. The women's washroom is a small toilet that only 3 or 4 ladies could use simultaneously. It so happened that when the victim came inside the ladies' washroom, she found there was only one foreign girl. The girl looked so frightened, as if someone waiting outside to kill her. The victim ignored her and entered a small toilet room. Before she could turn around and close the door behind her and open her clothes, the frightened girl took her by surprise and caught hold of her neck and tightened her grip until the victim's tongue came out and her color turned from red to green. The foreign girl did not let go of her neck until she turned her into a corpse. Then quickly she began to undress her. In a couple of minutes, she removed her clothes and left her dead body half naked, covered only by her red underwear and pink bra. She then swiftly removed her clothes and replaced them with her victim's clothes. The murdered victim is a Muslim young girl who is wearing salwar kameez and black burqa before she got killed and undressed by her female murderer. She then removed her clothes and put on the dead woman's clothes and black burqa. The salwar kameez and black burqa of the victim suited her well, as if they had been tailored for her. In the meantime, the kidnapped and missing Sudanese apostate girl Inaz Ahmed Salah has emerged running at fast speed out of the Indira Gandhi International Airport as if she has been chased by all Muslim terrorists of the world. She then waved her hand to the taxi driver, and before he asked her to get in, she pulled the passenger door open and inserted her body. She tried to talk, but her raising breath prevented her. She saw a notebook and a pen in front of her and grabbed them. She quickly wrote down the name of the address she wanted to go to. While the taxi is battling and racing through the crowded streets of New Delhi, her head is turning around in all directions like a table fan. The cabbie has already suspected that his female passenger is running away from someone or the police, But for the big amount of money he is going to receive from her, he has ignored that matter. He expected to get 2,000 rupees for taking the Muslim girl who is covered by a black burqa from head to toe from the New Delhi International Airport to the Nizamuddin railway station. Alas, after traveling for 2 hours and reaching the final destination, the taxi driver came to know that his female passenger is penniless. She began to cry and beg him to forgive her for lying to him. Through her tears and pleadings, she created a sad story and told it to the cabbie. She said her Muslim family sold her in marriage to a 70-year-old man from Saudi Arabia while she is only a 22-year-old girl. The old geezer wants to take her to his country as his house's maidservant in the day and at night his female sex slave. Somehow, she managed to escape from him at the international airport. The driver believed her sad tale and told her to go and catch her train. He is a Hindu young man and has a strong dislike toward the Muslim customs of forceful arranged marriage. Especially, he knows only Indian Muslims sell their little daughters in child marriages to those lustful rich Arab men. He also knows there are Islamic marriage agencies in Hyderabad city that specialized in selling underage Muslim girls to Arab pedophiles. The frightened girl Inaz spent that night sleeping among the poor passengers and beggars. She slept near a filthy public toilet. Every now and then she went inside the dirty toilet and hid for a long time before the nasty odor forced her to come out for fresh air. She is scared that the police might see her and arrest her for murdering the innocent Muslim girl inside the international airport's ladies' washroom. She concluded that, shortly after she escaped out of the washroom dressed up in her victim's burqa, her captor went in and found the murdered Muslim girl instead of her. By now, she thought, he had already reported her hideous murder to the airport police authority and an arrest warrant was issued with her Sudanese passport's photo. Inaz remembered the 2 policemen who kidnapped and brought her to the New Delhi International Airport had shown her renewed Sudanese passport and an air ticket in her name. She understood that the Sudanese embassy had lied to her and had not mailed her renewed passport to her address in Bombay. They just renewed it and kept it with them, and when she and her husband inquired about it, they lied to them. On the same day, they sent those 6 Indian policemen to the southern Sudanese student's apartment and fooled them with the story of the Indian neighbors complaining about 2 prostitutes who are selling their bodies to the African foreign students. Inaz has neither called her husband Joseph from a public phone booth nor tried to inform him in any other way what had happened to her after she got arrested and her whereabouts at present. She knows the first place the police might have looked for her is the Sudanese Free Hotel. She just wants to run as far as possible from her horrific crime. Her heart is bleeding with the blood of that innocent Muslim girl. She asked herself time and again why had she killed an innocent woman? She began to hate and despise herself. She knew and understood that if she does not get caught and punished for her heinous crime, she will live the rest of her miserable life with feelings of guilt which may eat her heart as cancer and kill her slow and painful death. The face of that pretty innocent Muslim girl dying slowly and painfully in front of her eyes kept tormenting her throughout that horrifying night in the slow Dehradun train. Why that devilish idea arose in her mind when she saw that innocent woman coming inside the ladies' washroom while she was dressing in her black burqa. Why did she have to come only at the time she was about to leave the washroom and go to the policeman who was waiting for her with a loaded gun in hand? Why had no other woman come with her victim? Why did she happen to be dressed up in a black burqa? And why the armed Indian policeman did not recognize her and shot her dead at the door when she walked in front of him and escaped? The fugitive Sudanese girl spent her night sitting in a crowded railway station among the Indian beggars and crooks. The Dehradun train arrived in Old Delhi at 10 a.m. and left Nizamuddin railway station at 11 a.m. Inaz has neither money nor a ticket. She just climbed inside the already fully packed train. She did not find an empty seat. She stood with the poor and the poorest of poor Indian untouchables near the door. The door is just a gateway without a door on it. If the ticketless passenger is not careful or has not found anything to hold to, he can be swept out by the wind and lands on his neck and break it. The slow Dehradun train took 35 hours before it reached its final destination in Virar on the outskirts of Bombay. It needs to crawl for another 2 hours more inside Bombay City before it arrives at its final stop at the Bandra terminus. It was the most difficult and horrifying trip a human being ever went through. Inaz ate nothing for that long time. The last food she ate was the roasted meat she had at the Nizamuddin area with her loving husband Joseph. In addition, for most of her trip, she remained standing near the door. A few times, she got enough space and sat on her knees. The fear of being arrested by the police and the mental torture of the hideous murder of the innocent Muslim woman she committed kept tormenting her conscience all the way long. In that painful and miserable condition, the escaped Sudanese girl Inaz traveled back to Bombay. Controlled by the fear of the police and paralyzed by the dread of the murder, the extremely tortured apostate girl was scared to go to her hut chawl in the Virar area and stay alone. Besides, the area where they are living has an awfully bad neighborhood. There are many Indian gangsters and crooks living all around her chawl. She is afraid some of those sexually frustrated men may discover she is staying all alone and come and rape her at night. 50% of the men in India are called sexually frustrated males. Those are the unemployed and poor men who cannot afford to marry women or find girls to fall in love with them. They are so poor that they cannot afford to go to the brothel houses and sleep with prostitutes. This is one of the factors that made India be number one in rape cases and also made it the most dangerous country for women in the world. Therefore, the escaped Sudanese wife Inaz decided to request her good neighbors to keep her in their house until her Ethiopian husband Joseph returns from New Delhi. Chapter 61. Celebrating the victory over the despicable apostate girl. Joseph Abraha has returned to Bombay after 15 days from the day his missing beloved wife's feet touched the accursed ground of the Sudanese embassy in the city where her persecutors are allowed to roam freely. While her other haters are masquerading themselves as foreign students all over the other cities of India. Her Ethiopian lover refused to get down at the Virar railway station. He decided never to return to their hut without his kidnapped beloved wife Inaz. He knows everything in that love nest will remind him of her. Her clothes, her photos, her perfumes, and even the furniture and utensils have the fragrant smell and her presence in them. Therefore, he determined either to return with her or abandon that wonderful love castle forever. Besides, after he lost his beloved Sudanese wife, the so-called accursed apostate girl Inaz, the handsome Ethiopian lover is no more afraid of those cowardly Sudanese Muslim students. So, the brave Joseph decided to return to the International Students' Hostel and live among those Sudanese terrorists. He also decided to return to his college and resume his medical study. He does not want to travel every day by slow local train for 2 hours to reach his medical college and another 2 hours to return to his hut in Virar. From the International Students' Hostel, he needs only 15 minutes to get to his medical college. In addition, Joseph wants to go every evening to the Marine Drive and sit by the Arabian seashore, where he used to sit with his beloved Sudanese girlfriend Inaz, and they confessed their love for one another, and where their lips touched each other for the first time. He just desires to relive those beautiful and wonderful days they enjoyed for many weeks. Those were the innocent and virgin days before those terror-inspiring Muslim students discovered their love affair and turned their wonderful love into living hell. In addition, the International Students' Hostel is the cheapest place in Bombay. In Virar, his wife and he are paying 5,000 Indian rupees every month for a chawl hut, which is not suitable for housing dogs or pigs. When they were living in an apartment in the opulent Bandra area, they used to pay 20,000 rupees per month. But when he was living in the foreign students' hostel, Joseph was paying 200 rupees per year. In other words, he was paying only 16 rupees a month. Moreover, the international hostel is more beautiful than a 5-star hotel in Bombay. It is sponsored by the government of Maharashtra and hence it is like free of charge accommodation to foreign students. Maharashtra is the richest province in India. Joseph used to live on the 14th floor. From his room, he could see through the window the beach of the beautiful Queen Necklace and the Arabian seashore. However, for the sake of being with his beloved Sudanese wife, the most handsome foreign student sacrificed his cheap and comfortable accommodation and became like a beggar living in the poorest and farthest place in Bombay. Joseph's return to the International Students' Hostel is not a surprise to any Sudanese Muslim student. Every one of them had already heard the news of his final and painful separation from the accursed apostate Sudanese girl Inaz. Some students returned from New Delhi and brought with them the news of what the Sudanese embassy had done to the infamous girl. The informers claimed they had obtained their reports from reliable top officials in their embassy. According to their reports, the despicable, adulterous, and apostate Sudanese girl Inaz had recently traveled with her uncircumcised infidel husband to New Delhi to receive her renewed passport from the Sudanese embassy. The embassy had already received through the mail her expired passport. It renewed it and kept it on hold. The apostate girl had sent many emails and letters and left countless numbers of messages in the answering machine begging the embassy to return her renewed passport because she is traveling soon with her Ethiopian husband to Addis Ababa. The embassy's officials purposely ignored her requests because they wanted her to come in person and demand her renewed Sudanese passport. They had a hidden plan for her. The stupid and filthy apostate girl Inaz walked in the trap and came inside the embassy along with her uncircumcised infidel dog. Their presence defiled the embassy and made every Muslim official hate them the more. One of the righteous men of Allah, a good Muslim man by the name of Mansur Silla, informed Mr. Ambassador about the arrival of the Sudanese apostate girl Inaz Ahmed Silla and her Christian husband Joseph Abraha from Bombay. The ambassador instructed him about what to say to them. Meanwhile, Mr. Ambassador wasted no time and at once contacted some Indian Muslim brothers whom he became friendly with at the Hazrat Nizamuddin Mosque. He promised to pay them a big amount of money if they assisted him in deporting to Sudan a bad Sudanese Muslim girl who rejected the beautiful religion of Islam and accepted the distorted religion of the brothers of apes and pigs, the false Christianity. She became an apostate because she fell in love with an infidel Ethiopian Christian boy. The Indian Muslims showed great zeal for Islam and agreed to do anything they could to send such an evil Muslim girl back to Sudan in order to be punished for her unpardonable sin of apostasy. They immediately sent 2 Muslim brothers and instructed them to follow the apostate Sudanese girl and her unclean pig husband and find out where they were staying in New Delhi. As soon as the 2 infidels came out of the Sudanese embassy, the 2 Muslim brothers followed them without their knowledge. They went behind them in so many places and entered wherever they entered. 2 places the 2 Muslim brothers could not enter with them were a liquor shop when they bought a bottle of whiskey and a crowded apartment where there were more than 20 black African Christian boys staying with only 2 girls with them, and one of those girls was none other than the apostate Sudanese girl. The 2 Muslim brothers knew in Islam it is haram for a husband to expose the nakedness of his wife to men who are not having any blood relation with her. Therefore, the good Muslim brothers suspected that the Ethiopian Christian husband, like a pimp, is allowing his beautiful and Arab wife to sell her thighs and pussy to those black African students. Then the 2 Muslim brothers phoned their spiritual leaders at Nizamuddin Mosque and gave them the address of the brothel and tavern house where the 2 infidels came to spend their night drinking alcohol and orgy. The Muslim leaders immediately enlisted the other 6 righteous Muslim Gondas and taxed them with the responsibility of kidnapping and transferring the apostate Sudanese girl back to Sudan. The word Gonda in Hindi means an extremely evil and dangerous gangster. Therefore, the nearest word in English to Gonda is a gangster. In my opinion, the best translation to Gonda is a Muslim terrorist. So, those 6 Muslim terrorists were instructed to contact the Sudanese ambassador and follow his orders. The ambassador had already planned for a direct flight of the apostate girl from India to Sudan without any transit stopping in any other country. He then sent the renewed passport of Inaz and her air ticket to those 6 terrorist brothers in the Islamic faith. After that, the Muslim brothers stole a police car and dressed up in police khaki uniforms and went and raided the brothel house of those Negroes who are all foreign students from South Sudan. They found they all were drinking and dancing. The accursed adulterous girl Inaz was so drunk when she got arrested. They arrested no one found inside except the Sudanese prostitute Inaz and another Indian hooker from the Nagaland province. Two of them took the infidel apostate Sudanese girl in a taxi and headed towards the Indira Gandhi International Airport. The other four took the Indian prostitute, who is a Hindu worshipper of idols, to a house and kept her imprisoned inside it until they released her the following morning. During that time, because they were Muslims and fasting the holy month of Ramadan, they neither raped her nor harmed her. Meanwhile, the other two Muslim brothers managed successfully to take the accursed apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Silla inside her plane and extradite her to Sudan. To prove that they had successfully accomplished their task, they showed the Sudanese Mr. Ambassador copies of her boarding card and her stamped Sudanese passport, which bore the seal of the New Delhi International Airport. Such reports about the kidnap and deportation of the accursed apostate Inaz girl had brought great joy and happiness to the hearts of those terrorist students in Bombay, and the news spread with the speed of light to other Sudanese students all over India and especially Pune city. The Muslim students of Bombay distributed candies and cookies among themselves to celebrate their victory over the despicable apostate and adulterous girl who spoiled the beautiful religion of Islam and tarnished the bright name of Sudan. Some of them even traveled outside of the cosmopolitan city and slaughtered 2 sheep as qurbans to their Allah, who freed and rid his faithful followers of the malicious apostate Muslim girl who defied his religion and crossed his red boundaries through her open apostasy and haram marriage with an uncircumcised infidel Christian pig. Then, they cooked the meat of those slaughtered animals and ate and celebrated all day long. Chapter 62. She became a citizen of the world. The beautiful Joseph did not spend more than a few days in the foreign students' hostel before 2 bearded Sudanese students confronted him with the incredible news while he is having his breakfast at the cafeteria. They showed him copies of the renewed Sudanese passport of his wife Inaz with the stamp of the New Delhi International Airport, and her air ticket, and her boarding pass. The date in the boarding pass corresponded to the date in which his beloved Sudanese wife Inaz Ahmed Silla and the Indian girl Nishita Naga Suresh were kidnapped by those 6 Indian policemen. Until that moment, he is believing the kidnappers are New Delhi police officers. All this time, he has not suspected they are Muslim terrorists who assumed the identity of the Indian policemen. He recollected that they were raided in their apartment at the Bandra area and falsely accused as drug dealers and taken under custody by the Bombay police officers. So, he thought those kidnappers in New Delhi are also from the Indian police enforcement. But they abused their authority and kidnapped those 2 innocent girls and brutally raped them and caused one of them to disappear or probably killed her. Joseph heard that the Indian policemen could rape a detained girl inside their wagon while transferring her to the lockup. Some of them raped their victims during their harsh interrogation technique, which is called the third-degree method. Consequently, Joseph has never thought for a second that the Sudanese embassy is behind that evil scheme of his wife's kidnap and disappearance or her murder. But now he has been informed by those 2 bearded Sudanese students that his beloved wife Inaz Ahmed Silla had been kidnapped and deported by a direct flight from New Delhi to Khartoum. Such a wicked scheme was plotted by the Sudanese embassy through the recruitment of 6 Muslim police officers of New Delhi. Therefore, the extremely angry Ethiopian husband Joseph Abraha decided to seek the help of the influential Indian wealthy business tycoon, the good Christian man Mr. Vijay Alexander. He wants to reveal to him the great evil that had been done to his beloved wife Inaz by the Sudanese embassy through the help of some corrupt Indian policemen in New Delhi. He determined to make those evil Sudanese diplomats and the 6 policemen pay to the fullness of the law for their hideous crimes of kidnapping and forcible transfer of his beloved wife Inaz. He also decided to tell him about the brutal rape of the innocent Indian girl Nishita Naga Suresh, who is a nurse in a hospital in New Delhi and has a Sudanese boyfriend. He concluded that by now his beautiful apostate Sudanese wife had already been tried by a Sharia court, convicted, and put to death for her unpardonable sin of apostasy. So, he vowed by God that he must avenge the holy blood of his beloved wife Inaz. The Ethiopian husband Joseph also held the office of the United Nations responsible for the evils that had been done to his Sudanese apostate wife. If they had accepted her case and granted her refugee status in India, his wife and he would not have stepped inside that den of kidnappers and rapists, which euphemistically called a foreign embassy of Sudan. Accordingly, he wrote a big letter to the UN office and disclosed to them what the evil Sudanese diplomats and those lawless Indian policemen had done to his apostate Sudanese wife. He sent along with his letter copies of his wife's renewed passport, her air ticket, and her boarding card which carried the date, the name of the Indian International Airport, and the plane that transferred her from New Delhi to Khartoum. Those two terrorist students gave him those copies and challenged him to use them to bring his adulterous and apostate wife back from Sudan. A few days after mailing his letter to the UN office, the angry Joseph went to the office of Mr. Vijay Alexander at the Kalina area and revealed to him what had happened to his beloved apostate Sudanese wife Inaz Ahmed Salah. Before we go with Joseph inside the good Christian man's office, we need to mention what has happened when his letter reached the United Nations headquarters in New Delhi. The Muslim female legal representative of the terribly persecuted Sudanese girl Inaz, Mrs. Salma Muhammad Ahmed, rejoiced and became so much overjoyed when she read the letter and saw the crystal clear evidence of the transfer of the accursed Muslim apostate girl who caused so much damage to her beautiful religion of Islam and made the unclean Hindu idolaters ridicule her beloved infallible Prophet Muhammad, who was sent as a mercy to mankind. She too concluded that by now the apostate Muslim girl Inaz had already been put to death for her abominable apostasy. Nevertheless, she expected that if such information reaches her senior officials, she will be blamed for not granting a refugee asylum for such a heavy persecuted girl whose life was in imminent danger during her stay in India. For that reason, for sure she will be fired. Worse than that, the husband of Inaz may take the matter to the Indian police authority and sue her. And if she is arrested, tried, and convicted, she will be cruelly punished by the Indian secular law. She knows quite well that she will be gang-raped by at least 5 to 7 uncircumcised Hindu police officers. All those scenarios are possibilities if she remains quiet and does nothing to cover up her religious bias against the despicable apostate girl. So, to hide her evil deeds, Mrs. Muhammad Ahmed decided to approve the pending case of Inaz and grant her refugee status in India. She knows such a refugee asylum of no use to the kidnapped and transferred to her country apostate Muslim girl. She used an earlier date and wrote a letter to the Bombay address of Inaz informing her about the approval. Along with the letter, she sent her refugee certificate and a check on her name. The check contains a huge amount of money. According to their rules, the UN office should pay for her living and lodging in Bombay from the day she came in person and applied for refugee status. They have also to reimburse her for the money she spent on the train tickets of her traveling up and down from Bombay to New Delhi and her 1 week staying in the capital of India. The evil Muslim woman expected the check to be returned to the United Nations office by the Sudanese apostate wife's Ethiopian husband because he is not authorized to cash it or deposit it in his bank account. Therefore, her letter has made Inaz Ahmed Salah a refugee girl who has become a female citizen of the world. Meanwhile, Mr. Vijay Alexander became deeply troubled by the sad news when the Ethiopian husband told him what had happened to his Sudanese wife Inaz. In his heart, Mr. Alexander blamed Joseph for encouraging his apostate wife to leave his protection and safety in his well-guarded residence at the Kalina area and move to his apartment in the Bandra area. But the good Christian man has not expressed the contains of his heart with the sad husband. He understood that Joseph was already going through the most painful separation and sorrow that the husband could ever go through when he lost his dear wife. He knows some Indian lovers killed themselves when they had been unjustly torn apart from each other, or their parents forced them to marry other spouses through Indian arranged marriages. So, Mr. Vijay Alexander comforted Joseph and promised to do whatever he could in order to see to it justice is served, and therefore the culprits are going to be severely punished for their evil deeds. However, Mr. Alexander told Joseph, no Indian authority can bring back to him his already extradited wife Inaz, who was forcefully sent back to her fatherland. Joseph agreed with him and told him he knows he has lost his beloved Sudanese wife forever. Nonetheless, he wants to punish those who kidnapped and transferred her to her country against her wish. Immediately, Mr. Alexander picked up his cell phone and called his police friend, the head of the Bombay Criminal Investigation Department, and reported the serious crime against the Muslim apostate female foreign student Inaz Ahmed Silla, which had been plotted by the Sudanese embassy and implemented by 6 corrupt Indian police officers in New Delhi. He guessed they are possibly Muslim policemen. The head of the CID is a Hindu man and promised his Christian friend to investigate the serious matter and see to it those culprits are arrested and punished by the mighty hand of the Indian law. Chapter 63. The Muslim Girl in Black Burqa. In the meantime, the assumed kidnapped and assassinated apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Silla spent 1 month in the house of her good neighbors in the village of Virar. All this time, she is waiting eagerly for her extremely handsome Ethiopian lover to return and take her back to their love nest. Every now and then she visited their hut chawl during the day and cleaned it up. Her small hut without her handsome lover is a deserted castle. It is lifeless and scary as if it is haunted by ghosts. Every day, she stands on her neighbor's balcony and looks at the busy street below her, hoping to spot the face of her handsome husband among those poor Indian people. Inaz is wondering why Joseph has not returned from the capital of India. Is he still searching for her in New Delhi? After a long wait, the apostate wife finally decided to take the risk and phone her husband and inform him about her miraculous escape from those evil policemen who kidnapped her with the Indian girl and her return to Bombay. Alas, when she dialed his phone number, her poor husband had already sold his cell phone to a Muslim shopkeeper at the Nizamuddin main market. At that time, he became so disheartened and penniless until he began selling his personal stuff. He was weeping day and night for his kidnapped wife. He already sold his watch to the same shopkeeper. The Muslim man gave him little money for his watch and cell phone. The greedy Indian shopkeeper promised to pay more money if the penniless foreign student agreed to sell his wedding ring to him. The ring is made out of pure gold. Joseph said to him, "Even if I have to starve to death or sleep in the Nizamuddin railway station among the poor and homeless Indian people, I will never sell my wedding ring." Joseph knew the only thing that is still tying him to his kidnapped wife is that little piece of gold. If he sells it, he will be like he has sold his beloved wife to another man with it. Joseph also sold his other personal items such as shirts and trousers and remained with only 1 shirt and 1 pair of trousers. He was wearing in his feet old men's slippers. Finally, his miserable condition forced him to sell his missing wife's clothes and shoes too. If he had anything more left to sell, Joseph would not have stopped to search for his kidnapped wife and returned to Bombay. One day Inaz happens to be sitting and weeping in her hut, which is like a doghouse, when the postman came and knocked on the door. No one had ever visited them before. So, she thought the visitor on the door was her extremely handsome lover and husband Joseph. She does not bother to find out whether it is Joseph or one of those Sudanese terrorist students or the Indian crooks who has come to harm her or rape her. She stood immediately and ran to the door and pulled it open. To her great surprise, she saw the postman standing with a big envelope in his hand. Without saying a word, he handed over the letter and gave her a pen and paper. She understood that it was a registered dispatch, and she had to sign it and prove that she had received it. Hurriedly, Inaz wrote her signature and returned the paper and pen to the postman. Without uttering a word, the Indian man turned his back and went away. Since the couple got married and began to live together, no letter had come to any one of them through their hut's address. Both of them received their families' letters through their college addresses. Inaz took her letter, closed the door, returned to the same chair, and sat. She quickly opened the envelope and looked at the big message that had been folded carefully and placed it on top of other papers. Reading a few lines, Inaz understood from where it came and who wrote it. The opening words revealed the sender is about to convey some good news. While Inaz is reading the big message, her heart is bubbling with joy unspeakable. She understood that, at last, she has been emancipated from that mental and physical slavery. Although her spirit had already been liberated by the Almighty God from the bondage of Islam when she converted to Christianity and became born-again person, still, her mind and body remained in captivity to that kingdom of Tartarus which euphemistically known as Sudan, or the land of people of black skins and dark faces. Now she is no more a citizen of Sudan. She has become without a country, just like the Greek philosopher Aristotle. Due to the persecution of his Athenian citizens, the greatest philosopher of all time preferred to be a citizen of the world. Then Inaz has kissed the letter by her sweet lips and dearly hugged her refugee certificate. That day, after hiding for over a month, she decided to go and sit in a place that is so dear to her as the holy river Ganga to Hindus and the sacred Kaaba of Mecca to Muslims. For her, her place is more sacred than the Kaaba of Mecca and the river Ganga. The Kaaba is a leftover of the temple worship of the pagan Arab prostitutes who used to worship the black stone and offer their bodies for sex to their male counterpart pilgrims. The river Ganga is the most sacred river to Hindus, and they worship it as one of their goddesses. Yes, Inaz wants to go and sit in the place where her lips kissed the lips of her handsome lover for the first time, and both united spirits began to drink from the fountain of their deep and genuine love. That first kiss was not an orphan, but gave birth to hundreds of kisses. And there she goes. The terribly abused and persecuted Inaz knew the area where she is going to sit and remember her wonderful days with her extremely beautiful Ethiopian husband is haunted and teemed with those children of darkness who are the citizens of her former country. So, to hide her identity, she put on the black burqa which she robbed from that poor spirit of the Muslim woman whom she murdered with her own hands. The fear of her being caught by the police and be severely punished for that hideous murder began to subside and diminish day after day. Inaz used her neighbor's computer and did a thorough search for any information about the ladies' washroom's murder at the New Delhi International Airport and found nothing mentioned about it. Not a single police report has mentioned such murder in all the capital city's newspapers or TV channels. Therefore, she started to entertain the possibility that the victim had somehow been rescued, and her dear spirit was restored to her unconscious body. Might be, after all, it was not her day to die. It is a Friday evening on the day the abused apostate Sudanese girl Inaz has come to receive healing for her many emotional wounds and bodily injuries by reliving a few minutes from those wonderful times. The beautiful Queen Necklace seashore is filled with young lovers and newly wedded couples. A Muslim girl in a black demeaning burqa has made every Indian lover and his beloved girlfriend feel uneasy. They are not used to this kind of coffin-like curtain. The beautiful Indian girls who come there with their handsome lovers usually put on shirts and trousers and lovely Indian saris. Some of them come in t-shirts with pants and shorts. Even the Indian police officers who guard them and ensure their privacy do not like to see such kind of a religious girl in that romantic place. Nevertheless, since there is no law to forbid Muslim girls in burqas to fall in love with their male counterparts or to be kissed in public, they ignored the girl in a black burqa. Notwithstanding seeing a black burqa-clad girl, some of the lovers loudly voiced their protests and showed their discomfort. Inaz, understandingly, ignored their unpleasant remarks and continued her walk along the beach. It did not take her a long time to reach her favorite spot. Unfortunately, she found her spot is occupied by a single lover who is waiting for his beloved girlfriend to come. The terribly persecuted apostate Muslim girl felt like going to him and telling him, "This is my spot," or else request him to allow her to sit beside him and relive her wonderful past with her handsome spirit mate. Inaz has become paralyzed, and her feet have been rooted in the ground as soon as she made the greatest discovery in her life. It is her extremely beautiful Ethiopian husband. If Joseph is living with her in the same city, why didn't he come to their hut Cha in Virar and love the pain and fear out of her heart? Has he become a madman like Kais after he lost his beloved Layla? Or else he has lost his memory after he lost her in New Delhi? Why is he dressed up in black clothes as if he is mourning and lamenting the loss of the dearest girl he ever met and fell in love with her? As a matter of fact, from the time he returned from New Delhi, Joseph always dressed up in black attire. He vowed that he should always put on black garments of mourning until he dies and goes to be with his beloved wife Inaz in the paradise of the hereafter. He grew a long beard which made him look like one of those Muslim terrorists who appear on Western TV channels whenever there is a suicidal terrorist attack on the NATO troops in Afghanistan. His black shirt and trouser made him appear to her as the angel of death rather than the angel of love she used to see in their beautiful days. The astonished wife somehow overcame the shock and went and stood near her handsome husband. The sad Joseph has become annoyed when saw a Muslim girl in her ugly black burqa is standing so close to him. He concluded that she is either a mad girl or a prostitute. He is not interested in either of the two types of stray girls. Whatever she may be, Joseph refused to believe she is a beloved girlfriend who is searching for her lover among those beautiful couples. Who can love a girl who looks like a black demon? A girl like her for sure will be having a heart full of gross hatred towards the man who abused her from childhood and buried her in that black coffin before her death. Joseph stood up and about to leave and go as far as possible from the scary Muslim girl. He thought she might be a sort of demonic manifestation of an evil spirit that emerged out of the sea. She appeared to him scarier than a ghost. He wondered how a rational human being could agree to dress up in that black coffin. The woman is the most beautiful creation of God, but Islam turned her into the scariest creature in the entire universe. But the ghost-like girl is not about to let him go away from her until he first uncovers her burial black clothes, sees her marvelous inner beauty, and sucks the honey out of her sweet lips. How can she let him go after she found him when she thought she had lost him forever? He is her English Romeo, and she is his Queen Juliet, or he is her Arab Qais, and she is his beautiful Layla. He is her beautiful Joseph, and she is his lovely Anaz. He is her handsome white peacock, and she is his beautiful colorful butterfly. Every girl in their medical college classroom wished just to hear him greeting her or smile at her. She is the only girl in the medical college who did not run after him. He was the one who ran after her and won her heart and trust, and then his love penetrated her inner being and touched her spirit. He was the one who believed in her story and innocence and took her out of her loneliness and persecution, and his love engulfed her life and changed her forever. He then introduced her to the love of Christ and freed her from the bondage of Muhammad. She took hold of his hand and prevented his escape. He tried to pull his hand, but she used her other hand and tightened her grasp. Can you please let go of my hand? So, you have forgotten her so quickly. Whom are you talking about? Your girlfriend. I have no girlfriend, and I am not interested in getting one. But she still loves you and longs for you, but you left her and ran away. Listen, girl, if you are one of those crazy Indian hookers who go around and fool people by claiming to read their future or sell her body to them in cheap sex, I have no time to waste with you. Joseph, have you not recognized me yet? Have you so fast forgotten your beloved wife Inaz? Who are you? Joseph shouted with a loud voice. I am your beloved Sudanese girlfriend Inaz. Impossible. Inaz had been kidnapped and forcibly sent back to Sudan. Yes, they had sent me to Sudan, but God has brought me back to you. Joseph, with trembling hands and heart beating fast and body sweating, he took hold of the face covering of the girl who is claimed to be his missing beautiful wife and uncovered the face of his dead and resurrected soulmate. She is Inaz indeed, but Joseph is still not believing his eyes. Nonetheless, to see his lovely wife standing before his naked eyes, he felt the loving God has breathed new life into his dying spirit. Therefore, he threw his long arms around her body and hugged her so passionately, and his lips found her lips and began to kiss her. Then the unjustly separated lovers have soared up to the sky of a deep and long rapture of enjoyment and happiness as if they flew to another beautiful planet in a faraway galaxy.